So this is the new 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and there's a little bit of controversy surrounding it, specifically with the price. I'll talk about that later on in the video, and I'll talk about who I think should buy it and if it's worth paying so much for this new iPad Pro. But I'm going to start off with what's new with this iPad Pro and some things that I like and dislike about it. So there's actually a couple things new with this iPad Pro, specifically the 12.9-inch model that I have here. So this year, they've changed up the design of the entire device by removing the home button and shrinking down the bezels all around. It also has this sort of iPhone 5 vibe with the flat sides and a little bit of the iPhone 7 with the antenna line. The flat sides don't actually feel that much different, like it doesn't feel sharp and it doesn't dig into my hand, which is really nice. And what really surprised me is how much nicer the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is. Like the 9.7 and the 10.5-inch iPads have always looked more appealing to me because of how comically large the 12.9-inch iPad was, but now that they've shrunken down the bezels all around, me and pretty much everyone at the Apple Store prefer the larger 12.9-inch model, and honestly, it doesn't feel like it's too big. It feels reasonable to hold and use, the large screen is incredibly nice to look at, and it's not all that heavy. It's really portable and nice to use, so it gets a 10 out of 10 for design. The speakers, I don't know if they've been improved or not, but they're still arranged in a quad speaker setup, 2 sets on the top and 2 on the bottom. They get plenty loud, there's a surprising amount of bass and low end with these. It doesn't matter what you're playing, whether it be videos, movies, or just music, these speakers sound really good, so it gets a solid 9.5 out of 10 only because they're not fun frying, and they do sound a little bit better when you point them directly at you. The screen is really good. Like, it's one thing to talk about how bright and how good the colors are, which they are, but it's another thing to actually use it, and it is a killer screen. The size, the colors, the quality of the panel, it's really nice to use. Reading books, watching videos, playing games, everything is awesome on this screen. It's bright, the colors are great, the contrast is really good actually. It's getting very close to OLED levels of contrast, but still not quite there yet, obviously. It's got a variable refresh rate from 24Hz up to 120Hz just like last year, so it's really smooth and fast when you need it to be, and it saves battery by slowing down to 24 when you're doing something like reading, for example. I did notice that some apps aren't fully optimized for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, like Discord works totally fine, there's no black bars or anything weird like that. YouTube and Facebook Messenger both have this black space for the home bar and the status bar, and games like Asphalt 9 just fill all 4 sides with a border, so some apps will need to be updated for this new iPad display. Now, iPad Pros have always had pretty beefy processors. They're usually just the processor from the newest iPhone, but with more cores, so this one is running the A12X Bionic chip. It's an 8-core processor. It'll use all 8 cores simultaneously if necessary, and it is fast. Like, it's faster than what most people will need, but if you ever decide to do something heavy, like video editing or photo editing, this iPad Pro will handle it like a champ. There's also a hidden magnet on the right side of the iPad Pro for pairing and charging your Apple Pencil 2, which is really nice. And the magnet is actually really strong, so the new Apple Pencil, it's not going to fall off. Keep in mind that the original Apple Pencil is not magnetic and it pairs through the lightning port, so it's not compatible with the new iPads. To be completely honest with you, I haven't actually tried, but Apple doesn't say it's compatible and it kind of makes sense that it doesn't. Now, one cool thing that you can do with the Apple Pencil is if you tap the screen while it's locked, it will instantly open up the Notes app so you can quickly jot down a note. And one more quick thing, if you buy the iPad Pro with the new Apple Pencil 2 and with Apple Care, it will also apply to the Pencil, and if you don't buy it all at once, like together at the same time in one transaction, Apple Care won't apply to the Pencil and it will only apply to the iPad Pro. Now, one thing that I want to note with the new gesture-based navigation is because of how big the iPad Pro is, like especially this one, it's almost 13 inches, it doesn't feel natural to swipe from the very bottom, so what I prefer is to use the 4 or 5 finger gestures that have been on the iPad since like at least iOS 7. So 4 or 5 finger pinch to close the app, or just swipe up to close, swipe up with a hard stop to access the app switcher, and swipe side to side to switch between your open apps. It's pretty much like using the home bar, except you can do it anywhere on the screen, but with 4 or 5 fingers. It's really intuitive. I just prefer it. The camera is similar to the iPhone XS, so it's got a 12 megapixel sensor, supports smart HDR that also works in video up to 30 FPS, both in 1080p and 4K. It doesn't have rear portrait mode, but it does support selfie portraits with that new camera. Battery life, oddly enough, is a bit on the shorter side for me. I do keep it at max brightness, which kinda tanks the battery, but doing so gets me like 6 to 7 hours of watching YouTube. It also comes with a faster 18-watt charger, but this time around, I think that's actually the fastest that you can go. I tried using my 87-watt MacBook Pro charger, and in 24 minutes, it went from 18% to 43%. So that's 25% charge in 24 minutes, which is, it's okay, but it's not quite as fast as 0 to 50% in half an hour like on the iPhones. I kind of expected a little bit more from this battery, but to be honest, it's not that big of a deal because I just plug the iPad in whenever I'm not using it, so that lets me keep everything maxed out. Battery life, it's really not a concern for me. They also switched to a USB Type-C port, which means you can connect accessories directly to the iPad without adapters, including cameras, flash drives, and monitors. Okay, so that's everything new and cool with this new iPad Pro, but the main controversy is the price tag. So the 11-inch starts at $800 and the 12.9-inch model starts at a cool $1,000. So if you got that kind of cash and you want the best tablet that you can get, then the new iPad Pro is exactly that. It's the best of the best, but with a huge price tag. If you want an iPad with a great screen, speakers, and all that, and you don't have $800 to spend, definitely get the 10.5-inch iPad Pro and maybe see if you can find a good deal on a used one. It's still got really good quad speakers, it's got a relatively thin bezel and a 120Hz refresh rate, so for media consumption, gaming, reading, like basic stuff, and you're not doing anything crazy, the experience of using it is very similar. So to most people, I don't recommend it because you're paying a lot more for stuff that, for my basic use case and in my personal opinion, doesn't really affect the experience of using it. But if you're asking just solely, is this a good tablet? It's expensive, but it's also super nice to use, and if you do get one, I think you're gonna enjoy it. So that's the end of my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you guys in my next video.